tell us from your perspective how you interviewed Montana Knife Company to hire you.
That's so funny. Yeah. So my experience at Amazon really taught me a lot, right? And it's something that for all businesses, I don't care if you're your own brand, whatever business you are, whether it's yourself or you work for a company, the most important thing about being in business is the customer, period. Learning to live your life that way. And I, just to be clear, I had no reason to leave Amazon. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I really did. I had a great team. I ended up getting to go back to Spokane. I launched a building and then ran that building. And, I moved up into all the places I wanted to be at Amazon. It was really great. And then, as an outdoorsman back in, at the time I was living in Spokane and, making the jump over to Montana to hunt my own hunting ground from when I was a kid, doing all of that kind of stuff. And Montana Knife Company had been in business for that first year, right? It was I bought my first knife middle of 2020 from them, just as a consumer. That November of 2021, my truck got broke into, my knife was stolen.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. As you can see through the intro, we've got Andrew from Montana Knife Company, the COO over there at Montana Knife Company, who really just enjoys building businesses, really believes in the brand that he is a part of there with Montana Knife Company. His story is outstanding. There's a lot that can be learned from his story alone, and I really appreciate that he came on to share that with us and why he's with Montana Knife Company now. So with that being said, hope you enjoy this conversation, guys. And if you're in the market for an amazing knife, I'm going to leave the link down below where you can check out the knife from Montana Knife Company, or all the knives that are in stock from Montana Knife Company. And then every Thursday, what you can get, because there's a new drop just about every Thursday, if not multiple drops every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Use the link down below. That helps me here at the podcast. And if you're already in the market for a knife, why not use that link? So go check that out, guys. Tune into this one. Enjoy it. Here we go with Andrew from Montana Knife Company.
Welcome back, everyone, to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I've got a great guest for you guys. We've got Andrew Oliver. He is the COO at MKC. And he told me before this, he's going to give you guys all the spoilers to make Josh really happy about no, just kidding. That's not going to happen, guys. If you guys want spoilers, you gotta just listen into Josh's podcast, because he'll tell you all about that. But I want to have Andrew on, because Andrew, he's got a very interesting story as far as how he got to be with MKC. I love the story. And then also we want to talk about, of course, family and how he incorporates family and faith into what he's doing up there at Montana Knife Company, and how he's incorporated that into business for people that maybe are just getting started down the road of business, building relationships. Maybe you want to eventually be a COO of a company, and take some advice from this guy right here, because he knows what he's doing. And if you guys don't know about Montana Knife Company, I don't know where you've been. You need to get on the drops, the secret drops, the early drops, all the other things that are going on with the company, because it's just growing and isn't going to stop anytime soon. So with that being said, Andrew, for people that don't know who you are, who are you, man?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that introduction. That's actually, it's amazing. It sounds a lot better than how I've experienced it in life. So I'm the Chief Operations Officer, Director of Operations, whatever you want to call it, for Montana Knife Company. Prior to jumping on board with MKC, I spent a couple years over at Amazon and kind of that early executive level, just in operations, running some fulfillment centers with them. And then before that, I spent 13 years in the United States Army. So all of that stuff kind of, really informed and kind of led to where I'm at now with MKC. I'm Christian. I married, wife, 3 kids. I've got 3 dogs, so plenty busy life. And really have spent, the last nearly 20 years kind of figuring out how to balance all of that stuff and continue to provide for my family and provide for, really be a contributor to the world. So.
Yeah, exactly. So you had a full-blown career before even Amazon. And,
yeah,
I haven't been in the military, but I was raised that way, in a military family. I was raised at basically Fort Bragg. I was born at Cherry Point over there in North Carolina, for anyone that knows about that Marine base, and everyone's favorite place, Terrace Island. It's an interesting environment, and it takes a big toll on a family for you to go into the military in general. And then you had some other operations and things going on that, just hearing your story, how you spoke with your wife and incorporated your wife into these decisions. And although in a military setting, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of, you want to do things better than the next guy and bring your team up, and you don't want to be left out. You did it in a way that made things work, with your family as well. Like, you knew the career was one thing, but you took your family into consideration, and you obviously love your wife a significant amount to take her opinion over ego and the guys that were in the unit that you were in. So I guess walk us through that when you started in the military, and then kind of fast forward to your transition out and why you made that decision.
Yeah. So, like anybody, I really knew that I wanted to serve in some capacity, even when I was a kid, and then through high school and all of that. By the time I got to college, I think I learned, that my freshman year of college, that I probably wasn't mature enough to to make decisions for myself. I only say that with tongue in cheek, but I basically burned the candle at both ends for that first year and a half, and made about every mistake I could. I was trying to get them all out of the way. I actually stayed out of trouble a lot in high school. I played sports and all that stuff, so I really kept my nose clean, and I had a lot of respect for my parents, and I think I just really knew that that's not what I wanted to do. And but then, as you get older, a lot of us guys tend to make some dumb decisions when you get to college. So I basically just kind of burnt the candle, and then realized, that I needed to do something different with my life. Now, I did have some goals, so I was, no matter what, I was going to finish what I started with school. But yeah, I was called to serve, and so I joined the Army in 2005. Went off to basic training, and then started that whole entire world. I think as we talk about how family and all that integrated, before that, I was actually engaged before I met my wife, and that person I had a relationship through college, and through the early part of my military career, just getting started. And I was all about being the best I possibly could be. I'm sure there's a pun in there about about some tagline for joining the military, but I put that 100% above everything else, right? And so I knew how hyper competitive it was, and I loved every single bit of that. And I loved every second that I was in the military. For those that don't know, I was in the Army. I was an infantry officer. I was also enlisted before that as well. But yeah, as I kind of got into that career path, I went as hard as I could. Deployed to Afghanistan with the unit. We saw lots of action, did all of that kind of stuff. And during that deployment, that person that I was engaged to at the time left me, and I was kind of left to kind of navigate how to handle that. And I really just kind of went all in on doing my job, and I was deployed, so like that was a kind distraction for what that kind of stuff ends up being. And so then when I got back, I actually kind of got myself back out there from a relational standpoint while we were kind of refitting and all that, and I met my wife. And so by that point, let's see, I was a captain. So I'd been in for almost 5 years. I had already kind of gone through, all of training and all of the different things that kind of move you up into the positions you're in, and that. And so she jumped on board in my career while I was already full in. And she came from a Latin family. My wife's Cuban. She's a first generation American. Her family all came from Cuba and Spain, both on her mom and dad's side. She grew up speaking Spanish as her first language. So she came from a very tight knit family. And I bring this all up just simply that she was jumping into a military culture that completely different from what she had. She'd never left Florida. She's from the Miami area. Had never left any of that, and really was jumping into the adventure that is that life. And for moving around and all of that was completely counter to what to what I think she was expecting, but she was all in. And that's something I will always I appreciate that she really did try as hard as she could in that. But we moved a lot. We had kids right away. That complicates things. And my career path and our relationship were kind of juxtaposed a little bit. And I think, I think when you make a commitment, again, just like, committing to finish school or committing to serve or committing to a lifetime with somebody and raising kids and all of that, I take that stuff really seriously. And I knew that no matter what decision I made in the military, it was going to be temporary compared to the decisions that I was making with my spouse and the way that our life was going. So that was an adventure in and of itself, through lots of different conflicts that you have, when you're married, and we can get into all of that. But that's basically it in a nutshell. Was kind of, jumping into a life in a relationship in the middle of the military that was kind of counter to one path. And I just knew that the decisions to make were always going to be with my spouse and raising my kids, because I think in the end, that's what you take with you.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what you do in terms of, there's, whether guys are SEALs or Green Berets or Rangers or anything that they ever do, or Marine Recon, whatever. No matter what you do, like that's great, and that's great for yourself, and it's great for the country. But man, that's not who you are. And I know a lot of guys really live that way. And I had to learn that. And I think the best thing that happened to me was really was that that relationship with my spouse, and her and I figuring each other out and growing up a little bit together, and kind of deciding like this is what our life was going to look like, however we did it together.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that, I highly respect that. My dad, he loved being a Marine. That's something that he really enjoyed doing. But the moment I was born and he realized how much he had to be deployed, and he was a Marine during the initial Desert Storm operation. And he was like, you know what? Like, as much as I love this, I would rather be home with the family. And I know that was hard for him. And I know it's hard for people that enjoy that and want to make a career out of it and enjoy the people, the brotherhood, and everything that they're involved in the military. So I respect that decision, and it's definitely not an easy one, because on one hand, you've made that commitment to serve to the military. And I want to highlight, not everyone says it this way, but you said you were called to serve. Well, there is no draft right now in the U.S. So the fact that you were called to serve, you felt that from your inside, whatever that feeling was from you, you knew that's what you needed to do at that time. And you were okay with pivoting when you made the next commitment of, this is what my eternal family is going to look like. This is what I want. And I can only imagine that being hard to leave that brotherhood behind, but also recognizing it's going to be even more so over here, because this is your eternal family. And so that's something that I just want to highlight for people, it's not an easy decision. It's not just like you were overnight, you're like, you know what, babe, I'm going to leave. I'm done. I'm done with the military. Like, I'm sure there was a lot of discussion behind that, and taking her, even the nonverbal communication that anyone that's married understands. When your wife says she's fine, she's not. So when you're getting the cold shoulder, when you get those nonverbal communication cues, you got to read those as well, not just what's being said. And so I can definitely understand that was not an easy decision, but I respect it 100%. So you got out of the military after a 13-year career, which is still a significant amount of time. Most people can't even keep a job for a year nowadays, let alone 13 straight years. And so you went from 13 years in the military to then you transitioned, and what happened after that?
Yeah, let's talk about transition. I think that's something that a lot of guys are like, hey, I need help, or there's a bunch of programs and this and that and the other, but and transition can be really scary, especially if your identity is totally tied into the military, right? And it's literally, or if you're in a role that you feel like a lot of the skills may not translate, right? Like, if you're great at shooting and you're great at jumping out airplanes and you're great at doing all of that fun stuff, it's pretty hard to then translate that. You think you have to go into the security sector or anything like that. But transition should start 2 years at a minimum, in my opinion, before you're actually going to get out. You need to have that conversation with your spouse, if you have one, or in your family. And one thing that, when my wife, Crystal, and I first started when we were, getting to know each other and really married in the military, like you said, there's a lot of nonverbal. Well, when you're a young couple, everything's nonverbal because you're terrible at communication, right? Like, and that's really what we were. We were terrible at communication for a long time. And I think that's something that's really important we learned in this process was how to communicate and really be open and honest and have those conversations. So we did, and we knew. I think I was in Cuba at the time doing something there, and she basically had gave me the phone call of like, hey, we can't do this anymore, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay. And it wasn't blah blah blah, she'll kill me for saying that.
Yeah
I promised I was listening, but it was something like that.
It wasn't Charlie Brown that you were hearing, right? You actually heard the words.
Yeah. And so it was one of those like, okay, let's make a plan. And so I think that's the most important thing to take out of all of this stuff when you're going to transition is a plan. It's not something that is emotional. It's not something, it might be emotional to process, but it's not an emotional decision to make. It has to be a logical one, and it has to be one that you put a lot of time in. And so for those people that are thinking about transitioning, that plan should start as early as you can, even if maybe you're not ready to get out, but start thinking about what that looks like, because there is going to be a point in your career, whether it's 4 years or 20, that you're going to have to make that move, and you need to think about how to do that. So basically the way that I looked at it was, how do I take care of my family the best I can? How do I distill my experiences from 13 years of service into something that's functional in the real world? And then I just knew the other thing is you have to trust yourself that, if you're successful in the military, you're capable of doing kind of anything you put your mind to. At least you should have that confidence, right? You've got this autonomy and independence and the ability to kind of solve problems on the fly. There's a million things that come with that service and that time that you experience. So you have to trust that yourself, that as soon as you get out, you're going to be okay, because you've already got a set of skills that you may not know you do, but you're going to be successful. You have to get past the fear of that. So then when it comes to making a plan, it's time to start investing in the things that you do know that you have. So like I spent years developing operations, leading people, from organizations from 40 to 300, 400 people, right? So I then had to figure out, how do you quantify or qualify that experience in the civilian world? And for me, that, and education might not be for everybody, but for me, that was to qualify it by getting an MBA. So I applied to a bunch of business schools. I just made a couple of criterias of like, hey, I want to at least go to a top 25 business school. But I didn't jump in. Like I looked for opportunities. I called our human resource command and basically said like, hey, I plan on getting out in the next 2 years, but I need an assignment that I can go to school and be co-located, doing the assignment and going to school.
Now, can I ask you something real quick that just popped into my head there? For guys that are in the military, maybe listening to this, and I can only picture this as just an idea that popped in my head. I'm sure it happens, but did you feel the fear or the concern that you would be treated different the moment you started letting people know that you were leaving in 2 years?
Yeah, great question. Yes. And I feared it and I saw it, right? I don't want to say I was doing really well in my career. I was competitive, and that's ultimately, like, in that world, it's all about being competitive. And I think that was honestly the hardest part. It wasn't, and that is where your ego comes in. You're like, I know that if I just keep doing this, my ego is going to be perfectly fine. I'm going to check every block that I ever wanted to and have a great career and be able to pat myself on the back. And as soon as I made that information known, first thing is I talked to people in confidence, right? I had a set of mentors. I had people that I knew would try to convince me to stay, but I didn't talk to them for the reason that I wanted them to convince me to stay. I trusted their judgment. And if they were really the kind of people that you trust and the people that are your real mentors, they're gonna steer you right no matter what. So identify who those people are, and then talk about your intention. Now, most of them are still probably in, and so they haven't made the transition, but they're going to at least be a sounding board for you. And they'll have your back, right? Like, so I did sacrifice some assignments. Like my next assignment, instead of from Cuba, was to go to 75th Ranger Regiment and compete to be a company commander there, right? So that was my next step. I was super excited about it, had everything, and then my wife and I had the conversation, and we had to pivot. So my next move was then, like I said, was to figure out what that was. So I called some contacts that I had at our human resources command and basically found assignments that I could co-locate with where I got accepted to business school. or online programs. Like there are other ways to do it, right? So I ended up getting accepted to WSU, and I ended up taking command of the MEPS station, the Military Entrance Processing Station in Spokane, Washington. So that was my assignment, and I took that assignment for 2 years. So that was my wife and I's really like off ramp plan, but we had to put it all together. So I needed to qualify my experience. So signed for business school, and started school doing that while I simultaneously, worked in a military role in Spokane. My wife also decided to upskill as well. She finished her degree at the same time, and then decided she was going to get her master's at the same time too. So we basically just looked at like, how are we going to off ramp ourselves out of this entire lifestyle, this career, and how are we going to set ourselves up to be the most successful coming out of that? So that's the plan in a nutshell. And that's basically how that process went.
Gotcha. Okay. So with that being said, I do want to, I guess, ask a little bit more in depth for, again, people that are possibly transitioning out. How did you overcome that fear? Because there can be the ego, but also the idea that people are going to start cold shouldering you, people that you thought were your friends, people that maybe even leadership seeing, okay, well, you're abandoning us, whatever. Yeah. And that's their egos. You can't control that. But how did you overcome? Because I know for a lot of people, and I'm like that as well. If you played sports growing up, you had teams, even now you've got communities in the military, you've got the brotherhood, you've got things going on. You don't want to lose that. That hurts. Right. And so I think that could also be something that is hard for men to address, that they don't want to lose that portion. And they're not doing it. You're not doing it to hurt the guys that you worked with for 13 years. You're not doing it in that aspect. And, the people that do love you, that do care about you, are going to recognize that you're wanting to move on with a family and better your life. And you've accomplished what you needed to right now in the military, and you're taking the next step. You're not leaving them behind. It's just, you're moving on, you're doing other things. How did you overcome that fear of, it's not really abandonment, but like the cold shoulder, that kind of deal from your brothers?
I'd like to say that I overcame it, but like, even when you were saying it, it makes me go like, man, because I miss it every single day. So like, there's a little part of you talk to everybody. I remember like we were at TAC at Big Sky, and it was the dumbest thing ever. But I looked at Jocko and I asked him like, hey man, would you do it all over again? And he looked at me like, you idiot. Of course I would do it again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course. And I didn't even think about it. I was just like, yeah, you miss it. You're going to miss it. It's going to be something that always stays with you forever. But the fear is quelled by your investment in yourself and your faith in your family, your relationship with God, if that's what you choose, your duty to be the best father and spouse that you can be far supersedes whatever you're going to do in the military. You already proved that anyway. Like, you've done all the stuff that you need to do. Typically, when it's time for you to get out, it's time for you to get out. Right. And then you also, in your plan of whether like you're upskilling, working on your family, you also have to have a plan to work on yourself, and you have to have a plan to make relationships, which is probably the most scary thing, is making relationships post-military and finding those communities. Like for me, it was at church, at the gym, like even here when we moved to Montana, our jiu-jitsu gym, right? The guys you work with, like anything that you can do, especially if it's something hard or if it's something connecting like faith, like those are the places to build community around. Those are the places people will hold you accountable. And those are the places that you are, it's a quid pro quo where you're investing in each other all the time. So I think that helped quell the fear a little bit. And it also was something methodical that you can kind of apply to that transitionary process and know like, hey, I know here's a box that I have to check. I have to get into a gym, or I have to get, into a community, and force yourself into those uncomfortable positions, because that stuff is the stuff that gives you some foundation.
Yeah. And essentially that's what you did, going from high school out, you were like, well, I can do this college thing, but it's not really for me. And then you took that uncomfortable step of, yes, I guess in a way, like leadership in the military takes the responsibility of, you don't really have to pick your friends, right? They just kind of put you there.
Sure.
But And I bring that up because it is a big deal. Like I haven't, again, been in the military, but I have had, just from high school, you have those friends that you're like, man, we're going to be best friends forever. And then you graduate high school, they get wrapped up with some chick and she doesn't like you. And so all of a sudden he stops talking. You're like, dude, I've known
Yeah.
you for more than half my life. And for some chick, you're going to stop talking to me. Like,
Yeah.
and that happens. It sucks that, the word that keeps popping up is abandonment. It's not really abandonment. It's just more of that losing a relationship that you've invested so much time.
It's grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's what I've felt over, the years is I genuinely grieve that part of my life only in the way that you grieve a lost family member or anything like that. But grief is really good, right? Grief is healing. It's cathartic. It's an actual physical emotion, and I think it's something that's really good for all of us to have to just work through and process. Right. So.
Yeah, and then you grow from that as well, because there's times where like you hit a moment where you were like, okay, it kind of was an ultimatum, like I'm going to choose my family or I'm going to choose my military career. You chose your family because you saw more of a future in that and the best version of you in that. So you start going down that path. You're going to outgrow some friends, unfortunately. They're enjoying that, and that's their career path or whatever it is that they're on. It's not that you're better than them, and they may feel like you feel that way, but you're just making a better choice for you and your situation. And so that applies to military, that applies to jobs. Maybe you've been at a job for 10 years and you realize I'm kind of hitting a ceiling. I need to pivot and go somewhere else and start somewhere new. And I love the fact that you said, 2 years. So I think that'd be the biggest hurdle if I was in that situation of not wanting to let people know and worrying about that. But at the same time, it's smart to start 2 years before you're out. So you can get those connections. You can start school. You can take advantage of all the benefits that you can from the military, because that's what they're there for, to be able to get you springboarded into your next, position. So you left the military, you transitioned out, and then you got your MBA, and then you worked at Amazon.
Yeah. So I get my MBA. I have, now I have credentials. I've got the experience that I've tried to distill into civilian terms and with the military. And I applied to 100 jobs.
Pardon this interruption, but I do want to bring up to you guys some amazing things that we've got going on here with the podcast. Some outstanding partners. If you're listening to this here in March, Go Ruck is giving away a plate carrier with a weight plate of your choice to one lucky person. Check out the link down below. If you're listening to this after March, go check out Go Ruck's gear. They've got some amazing clothing items, workout items, sandbags to build up your home gym, or rucking packs to be able to get out and go for your rucks as you train for the mountain or whatever hunts that you may be going on, carrying out that big buck, the elk, whatever it may be, or just going on hikes and rucks with your family. So with that being said, check that out down below. It'll save you some money on some amazing gear that has an outstanding warranty and has great people behind it that trust the items that they're providing to you. So thank you so much for that. Have a fantastic rest of this episode. Enjoy it. And let's tune back in to the conversation with Andrew.
100. I was just like, hey, I'm not going to put any constraints on it anywhere in the world. And I just put myself out there to all of my dream companies, whether that was in aerospace. I did obviously try to find some work, especially in aerospace and defense, down in Florida, where my wife's from, just to get her back to her family, all of that kind of stuff. I applied everywhere, right? 100 jobs, and the only callback that I got back was from Amazon's basically executive or pathways. It's called their pathways program, their recruiting program, where they're pulling people out of the military or from elite business schools, right? That's the only callback I got out of 100 applications. So I ate a bunch of humble pie in that too, right? Mm-hmm. So there's nobody telling me how great I was. There was no nothing. It was just like, sorry, we can't see it. Can't see it. We can't, and learning how to distill that.
And that's a big thing too, because you went from a leadership position in the military for many years, heading into your next opportunity would have been leadership in the Rangers, which is an elite unit. And you went from that to, who are you again?
Right.
That's a big, again, that's another hurdle. And I love that you point out, you applied to 100 places and one called back, because there's people that are like, man, I just got out of, I went through and got my MBA as well. And
Yeah.
people that they're like, man, no one's really calling. I'm like, well, where have you applied to? And they're like, well, like, a handful of places. I'm like,
Not even
you're
started.
basically a salesman for yourself at this moment. Like, you are
Yeah.
putting your resume out there. That's like the flyers on your windshield that are annoying at the gym, but you
Yeah.
put out so many of them. And then, like you said, you got one back. So you went and started working at Amazon.
Yeah. Well, the first 25 applications you put in, man, in interviews, those are just reps to show you how terrible you are at trying to get a job, right? And like interviewing, resume writing, all that kind of stuff, no matter how much training and practice you get, or training in all of that, like, until you're doing it for real over and over and over again, like, you're just terrible at it. It's like anything else. It's a muscle. And if you're like a lot of us, like, you don't like to talk about yourself. So like the last thing I want to do is sit there and be like, yeah, I did this, that, or the other. It's like, you sound like an ass. So that was a hard hump for me to get over.
That's why I like to host the podcast, not be on the other end.
Yeah. For the record, by the way, I thought the last podcast I did with Josh I thought that would be the most boring thing for anybody to listen to, because it's the last thing that I really want to do in life. And I'm glad I can do this with you, Jonathan, but I think like, it's just one of those things. This is not my favorite thing to do, because I don't like to talk like this.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to teach, coach, and mentor and all of that kind of stuff. But I feel a lot more comfortable in those lenses. But yeah, like, you spend the first 25 just as practice, like, because you might as well throw those away. And then you get better at it and better at it. So I end up working for Amazon. I was in a group of all sorts of really high performers, and it was really great. We went through basically a board process, interviewed like 5 or 6 times with all executive level people in different facets of HR, operations, and all that in business. And eventually you get into the program. And the program's just the program that I got into with Amazon is just a fast track of like 4 years between basically a guy off the street from, a top business school or a successful military career, fast forwarding them through 4 years of basically a gauntlet of experience with Amazon to really that first executive level of like that GM, general manager level of one of their major fulfillment centers. Basically, you got 3,000 or 4,000 people working for you. You're in charge of a major business unit. You're doing billions of dollars in sales and management. So like, that was basically what I jumped on board with, and I loved it because it was aggressive, competitive again, right? It was one of those things that I was attracted to it, and I was all in on it because it was hard. And talking to everybody that I talked to going into it was like, hey, Amazon's a really hard place to work. Turnover's ridiculous. They treat you like crap, all of this kind of stuff. And it just one excuse after the other. And part of me was like, well, there are some people doing really great things, and it's the world's biggest company for a reason. And it's one of the world's most high performing companies in terms of operations for a reason. And so like, I was super attracted to it. And then when I got in the middle of it, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, yes, this is hard. But it was hard in a great way. And I think people tend to like bash that kind of stuff because when they finally hit that wall and they're like, oh my gosh, this is way harder than I imagined, that's kind of where they crumble. That's just where it gets fun, and you really start to develop some character and learn. So
they're like, wait, I signed up for management. I went through a couple years of college.
yeah,
and shouldn't I get a corner desk with a view and get to kick my feet up? Like,
no. And I was on the floor, like, this fulfillment centers. The one that I first started was in Shakopee, Minnesota, 830,000 square foot interior facility. Basically, wearing a pedometer. We did, most people, including especially managers, did at least 26 miles a day walking. Like, they were doing marathons a day. Like, I lost 30 pounds in the first, couple weeks or couple months of working there. It was great. And it was physical, lots of people. So it challenges your leadership in every way. And then it's hyper technical. And in the end, you're always being evaluated, right? They're always demanding you to deliver the next best performance every single day. And it's a business that's managed by the second, not by the day, not by the week or month. It's by the second. And because of the technology and because of the way that everything's kind of connected within a fulfillment center, for instance, you literally know what's happening every second. And then you're therefore responsible for it, right? So that was basically how I got started in Amazon.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's Amazon is one of those companies that, like, yeah, you could feel like a cog in a wheel, even in management. But the fact that you got to go and help start, you recognize your position, where you were at, and you took that opportunity to learn, because there's a reason why, like you said, Amazon's such a big company. It was funny. We went to the movies. Was it 2 weekends ago? And I realized that Amazon bought MGM. I'm like, wait, what? Because you get that lion, and then it said an Amazon company underneath. I'm like, wait a sec. Well, hold up a minute. Like, what in the? Are we gonna
Sure.
start seeing Jeff Bezos do the roar? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
but it was interesting, and it just kind of shocked me for a second. I'm like, wow. Like, and it didn't even just say, like, it just said an Amazon company. To me, the verbiage there just tells me, like, it's a part of Amazon now. It's not even
Yeah.
their biggest investment. Like, it is just a part of them now. And so that
No.
just kind of blew my mind, the iconic lion roar is now, the blue box, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny. It is the world's biggest, or at the time, at least, it's the world's biggest company. It's $1 trillion company, right? But what's really impressive about this, and it's funny you say that, because if you go back into, like, the, being in the business itself, it's actually super flat. The way that what makes it successful is allowing its leaders to be autonomous and holding them accountable. So first of all, you have to hire well. You have to hire people that you can trust, that are going to deliver results, right? And then you got to trust them to actually lead the business, because you
Right.
cannot be at that scale and try to micromanage everything from some ivory tower in Seattle, right? It just doesn't work that way. Now, that's also what I think gives people consternation, is because they're then held accountable, right, by somebody. And they're like, they own a lot. They own a lot of the business, but it's super flat. So, like, if I wanted to make a decision at any time at Amazon, I simply had to make the decision. Like, yeah, do the ROI on it, return on investment, whether that's people, money, process, whatever it was. If I could legitimize it, like, and prove that it works, and then apply that at my facility, I could improve that it would work at other facilities. It goes out like that, and it gets distributed across the entire network. So that's what I mean by being able to, like, one simple guy who doesn't know anything from Montana can make a decision that, and in a process improvement, for instance, that then gets immediately distributed out to an entire network. It changes the business, and for the business, it could make millions and millions of dollars, or it can improve the lives of the people working there, or most importantly, improve the customer's experience.
Yeah. So basically, Andrew's trying to subtly say he's the one that started the buy of MGM. No kidding. Just kidding. Not really. But no, that is it. Just, I don't know. Again, Amazon's kind of one of those things that everyone's got the app on their phone. Everyone orders from Amazon. They've got their fingers in so many different things that you forget about them almost. It's like the air conditioner or the fan running in the background. You don't hear it. You're used to it. And then something like that happens where it just pops up on the big screen. I'm like, oh yeah. So,
Yeah.
but so that's really cool that you had that experience. You were able to learn from it. You gathered from it, instead of being, I don't know, butthurt that you didn't have a corner office and you had to walk a marathon a day. You learned from that, and you took that challenge, and you went forward with it. So, after working at Amazon for a little while, you heard about this little knife company that was starting up in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and what happened there? Tell us from your perspective how you interviewed Montana Knife Company to hire you.
That's so funny. Yeah, so my experience at Amazon really taught me a lot, right? And it's something that, for all businesses, I don't care if you're your own brand, whatever business you are, whether it's yourself or you work for a company, the most important thing about being in business is the customer, period. And Amazon, like, you talk about acquiring MGM, Amazon acquires MGM because at some point in some decision matrix, they decided that the customer was going to benefit from that acquisition, not necessarily Amazon. It's about delighting the customer. So maybe made something easier to deliver that value proposition to the customer.
Right.
So fast forward, learning to live your life that way. And I, just to be clear, I had no reason to leave Amazon. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, I really did. I had a great team. I ended up getting to go back to Spokane. I launched a building and then ran that building. And, I moved up into all the places I wanted to be at Amazon. It was really great. And then, as an outdoorsman back in, at the time I was living in Spokane and, making the jump over to Montana to hunt my own hunting ground from when I was a kid, doing all of that kind of stuff. And Montana Knife Company had been in business for that first year, right? It was 2021. I bought my first knife middle of 2021 from them, just as a consumer. That November of 2021, my truck got broke into, my knife was stolen.
I can't believe I almost forgot about this, guys. We have $75,000 on the line with our spring challenge with First Phorm. Guys, check that out as well down below. I want you to get entered in on this. I want you to have access to certified advisors that are trainers. They're going to go through, walk you through, and not just give you some cookie cutter plan, but it's something that you can get dialed in, your nutrition, your training for you, with substitutions on certain movements if you need, talking through with your trainer, checking in weekly. Guys, it's a real deal situation. We want to help people get long-term lasting results, real people like yourself. So if you want to get, healthier would be even more important than the $75,000. If you want the opportunity to win $75,000, and if you just want to see what First Phorm is all about, check it out down below. I'll leave that link here. Thanks so much, guys. Now let's get back to this conversation with Andrew.
All my buddies man, because my buddies were like, why are you buying such a premium knife? I'm like, guys, because trust me, when you try it, you'll understand. There isn't a better hunting knife on the market. And I'm not just saying that even now. Truly, there isn't a better hunting knife on the market. And so I was devastated. And I posted on Instagram, which you guys will look at my Instagram. I'm not a great Instagrammer guy, right? I'm sure Brandon's losing his mind right now, but it's just not, it's not one of my skill sets. It's not something
Andrew
I spend my time on.
The best influencer ever.
Yeah. Follow me if you also want to be bored to death. You can tell I'm also not in marketing at all, right? So yeah. So anyway, I just had posted hey, just for my buddies, and I added or tagged Montana Knife Company only because I was bummed, and I also because I really like pushing business. Well, I got a DM from them basically saying hey, send us your address, we're going to send you a new one. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
And again, this is early. This was early, relatively speaking. It was the tail end of 2021. And that was something that just stuck with me. And stuck with me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. I know that seems simple, but then kind of seeing how the company was growing and the stage that I assumed the company was in, I was like, this is something I think I can get behind and I think I can help. And it's, in my home state, it's something that I felt hey, I really do think that I could be a multiplier. So that conversation kind of kept going. And basically I talked to Josh, another DM on LinkedIn or something like that. And I just said, hey, really appreciate what you guys are doing. This is a little bit of my background. Voluntarily, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. And he's like, well, actually, and this was in, I don't know, March of 2022. And he's like, well, actually, kind of looking for somebody to help us from an operations standpoint, kind of, streamline the company a little bit and help us grow. And I was like, oh, well, that's actually something I might be able to help you with. So it kind of a couple conversations back and forth. And, then I really I told him my background and kind of my experience and what I was doing at the time. And he's like, well, come on out to Frenchtown and we'll meet and all of that stuff. So in April of 2022, I came out to Frenchtown where we're at right now and had a meeting with Josh and Brandon. And basically we just talked about everything, right? We talked about our theory, our philosophies. We talked about what they thought the company could do. We talked about, they were going to build this new building. In fact, when I was there, Josh and his dad had just dug the foundation of our current building and the work guys were getting ready to frame out the pad to pour the concrete pad. So, we watched them do that while we were chatting and kind of talking through the future. And then we kind of walked through. At the time we were in a 2-car garage here. And you've seen it. So, and we kind of walked through the whole process and I told them basically a couple easy things to fix. And I also, when I did my interview with them, basically I sent them a letter. And in that letter, I asked all of the hard questions you would as a guy that is like, if you were to invest, right? If you were an investor, and then also from a guy that really wants to understand your operation. And they couldn't answer any of them. And that's not a knock on anybody. It was just that's not where the company was. It was literally
Right.
Josh, Jess, Brandon, a handful of killers, assembling all of our knives, working their asses off to really deliver something special. But it was super lean, super gritty, and it was exactly what you want out of a startup. And I basically just fell in love with it. And Josh immediately felt like family to me because, also being from Montana, we spoke the same language, had the same kind of ideas. And it just really felt like it was the right fit. And so, yeah, it just turned into one conversation, one great customer experience. Let's really distill it back to what it was. One great customer experience to a great philosophy to, trying to apply some value to that and grow it.
Yeah. No, and it's funny. So I've recorded with Brandon at the time that we're recording this, and we brought you up because I was like, look, I had a recent experience too, and I know you don't talk about it a lot necessarily. You brought it up on the podcast with Josh. I also had my truck broken into and had an R&D knife, the Marshall, and that was stolen.
Little pocket knife.
And the little everyday carry knife that I just keep on me. And I had a similar situation happen where they replaced it, and I was blown away. I was like, look, I know you guys aren't making these right now. Do you have any around the shop that I can buy from? That was my message. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. And like within a couple of days, I was like, what? No, hold on. Like, let me Venmo you something, and send me an invoice. And I was joking with Brandon. I was like, look, you guys gotta, because I recently partnered up with you guys, and then they hired you. I'm like, you guys gotta quit hiring people that get their knives stolen out of their trucks. Like,
no kidding.
But
seriously,
no, it really is a mind blowing experience. Even if hopefully no one ever has their knife stolen, right? That's a sucky experience, and you just hope to goodness it never gets used in anything bad. But in reality, like the customer experience, the level of how they take care of people, and if people are on Instagram and they're posting about Montana Knife Company, like Brandon and the people that help now, because it used to be all Brandon, and now I can tell his thumbs are getting a little less buff because he has people helping now with the Instagram. But all jokes aside, like they look at every single message and they reshare. As if you tag them, they reshare everything. You guys, you do an awesome job at making people feel like family. And also on top of that, Josh will reshare other knife makers' work, which blows my mind.
Absolutely.
Because some people would be like, they're like, hey, why are you sharing someone else's stuff when you want people to focus on yours? And he's brought that up a couple times. He's like, well, because we're a community, I don't work in that avenue. That's someone else's avenue, and I really like their work.
Sure.
That's art. I'm going to share it. It's amazing. It blows my mind, and it's just an awesome experience.
Well, when you put the customer first, you no longer have to worry about competition. It's really important for people to understand the difference, right? If you are competitor focused, you're spending all of your time looking backwards or looking across at looking at someone else's work. If you look at your customer and hear what your customer needs, and that's all you do, and you do it as a zealot, and it's the only thing you focus on. You will always, one, deliver for your customer. Two, there's plenty of space in this world to deliver for all of our customers, whether it's another knife company or not. The other thing about that is then both companies, or all the companies, if they're all focused on delivering for the customer, raise the overall quality of the product for the customer in general, and that's healthy too. And I think all of it is great. And I find that we spend enough time talking about the customer every day that's part of what makes us different, is we really do just focus strictly on the customer. And I think if you talk about like answering every single email, DM, et cetera, we're investing in those positions, right? Whether it's customer experience or customer service, two different things. Those are areas that we invest in as a company, because those are the interactions. That's also why, going into American manufacturing, that's the value proposition you get with American manufacturing. You get a relational experience with something that you can get behind, that there's really other Americans on the other side helping prop each other up, right? Whether you're the customer or you're creating the product, it's communal. And you don't get that when when you have buyers and bringing in product from overseas. That's an entirely different thing. We get to covet and we get to hold that relationship with our customers, and we hold it dear. Jess, Jess runs both our fulfillment. Jess Smith runs both our fulfillment and customer service. You see her on our Instagram. You see her on our YouTube all the time. She takes the time every Monday to read customer emails to us. The whole team. I run 2 major meetings during the week. I run a Monday morning ops sync that kind of talks about blocking and tackling for the week. And then we run a Wednesday, like flatten the organization, talk about strategy, and let every single person that's putting a screw in a knife know exactly where we're headed. We don't hold or hide anything from our employees because we want them on the journey. Jess takes that time to really read good and bad. Good feedback and bad feedback is both feedback, right? And it's something that we value tremendously. She takes that time to read to us, story time. And it's amazing because we get to personally hear from our customers, whether they're saying, great job, keep it up, we love you guys, or, hey, this happened to my knife. It doesn't matter. We take that story time very seriously.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's it really is an amazing operation, and it's not just it's not just profit focus. It's not something that you're not out to obviously it's a business, right? So any business, you have to make money to grow, but that's not your focus. Your focus is really providing a knife for the hunter, for the worker, the blue collar worker. I mean, that really is what it is. And people that buy a knife become part of that family. And it's something that you can't put words into. But it's spreading like wildfire because, I was wearing this hat, and I think I had a First Phorm Outdoors t-shirt on, and I had a Go Ruck backpack or something like that. I was in the airport, and I was, answering messages and emails and stuff. And I had someone look over. He was like, "Hey, what'd you kill?" It was in November. It was in November on the way back from Ohio. And I just kind of looked up. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, do I have blood on my hands? Like, what? and he was like, dude, you're wearing an MKC hat and a First Phorm Outdoors t-shirt. Like, I know you're a hunter.
Yeah.
And we started talking about it. And another dude chimed in and was like, yeah, actually, I just bought my brother-in-law this for their wedding. I bought him a Blackfoot because they finally had them in stock. They were keeping them in stock. He was like, I was able to snag one and buy that for his wedding. And the other guy was like, yeah, I've got a Speed Go, and it was cool to have that conversation with someone in, I think it was like Minnesota or something. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
And just to recognize this hat and know what it stands for and the quality. And then, of course, that generational promise that comes along with it, where I'm going to be able to hand off these knives that I've got back here to my kids, and they're going to be able to take them out on their hunts. They're going to be able to use them, and grandkids and et cetera. Like, it's not something that's a flash in the pan. It's, you guys are going to be here for a long time. So
yeah,
I love it. You guys run it.
Well, we really love to hear that too, man. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, of course. There was something I was going to bring up and it slipped my mind for some reason, but I guess talking about the emails. So also before this comes out, Jesse Jess just came on the podcast, and I think it was her first podcast, if I remember correctly. And she tells all about the emails and everything that she gets to answer, the good and the bad. And I love that you guys don't hide that from people. Jess definitely highlights the fact that you guys take care of everyone. And even though there are some people that are just plain mean, you guys still want to make sure that they get answered and there are good quality interactions with those people. And you recognize that as an investment. That's huge too. So how much of that, I guess, actually, I want to pivot a little bit here. It's going to be a hard pivot. I want to talk a little bit about how faith and your family, because as you're talking about your messaging with Josh and stuff, this is what popped into my head. That whenever I share stuff with my wife, she's kind of like, cool, what it is. Like, to her, it's not a big deal. Whereas for me, when I started building that relationship with Josh and Brandon, and then coming out to Montana Knife Company, for her, it was cool. And it wasn't really a real thing until we were out there at the event. And she was like, I was introducing her to people like Derek Wolf and,
Sure.
people like that. And she was like, wait, this guy started Under Armour. Like, that started clicking with her. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through these messages with Josh, I imagine you're sharing them with your wife. Your wife's looking at this amazing job that you have at Amazon, the benefits, the money, like everything. What were her thoughts when you were like, hey, guess what? There's a knife company that's been around for a year that I'm going to go out there and visit here, in Montana. What was she thinking when you were talking to her about that?
That is a great question. No, I'm serious. I must be the luckiest guy in the world, because it was actually, I was the one that was going like, I know I could do a lot for these guys, but I also know I'm right where I should be with, like, from career, from hard work, from stability. We had everything at our life in Spokane. We had a great church. We had a great community, the whole works. And she was the one that actually was like, I feel like this is where we're being called. And she has also been super great. She's got a great relationship with God as well. She has always been a better listener than I have. And she tends to translate better than I do. So when it's like a random, we were literally sitting in bed, like on my phone, and I go, look at this conversation I'm having with Josh. And she goes, I think that's a thing. Like, I think that's something you need to have, you need to go into. I think that might be a little God breathed. And I listened to her. And so, despite being so risk adverse and having grown up in a very comfortable setting, there was a part of her that she just simply was like, this is the right move. And so we were all in as soon as we kind of worked out some of the details. And we wanted to come to MKC as much of servants as we could be, because we knew that that's what it's going to take to build the company from what I could see. I didn't get to experience it like Josh, Brandon, and Jess did in the first year of business. But I knew that when I was injecting my experience and skills in, that it was going to have to be through that lens. And so we felt like we were going into a place that needed us from that standpoint. And we felt like we were being called. That simple.
Yeah. I love it. And you keep bringing that up, and that's definitely a very much, at least for me, a Christian term, being called to do.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about it that way. But yeah.
You're well, and I served a mission for the LDS church, and you're called to serve, that's your calling. You receive a calling, etc. So I'm used to that. But I also recognize that a lot of people may not understand what that means. And so I just want to highlight a few things here. Again, you listen to your wife, which, man, please, like, it's a good idea. Still. But yeah, exactly. Like, you didn't turn into Charlie Brown, like it was, you listened to what she had to say, but you were sharing that. Like, it wasn't something, hey, out of the blue, after you've had these conversations, you didn't just look over, hey, I'm going to go to Montana and kind of check this out and see. Like, you've been sharing that with her. You've been communicating that with her. On top of that, over the last however many years you guys have been together, you prove that, one, you were growing, so you were learning to listen to her. You chose her over the military. I mean, that military career. You built out your future. You for a lot of women, they need that security blanket. Whether that be money, whether that be, whatever it is, they need to know that they are taken care of. And so you proved that over years. It wasn't just something, I don't want men out there to think that their woman is not being supportive if you all of a sudden just say, hey, I'm going to go help a startup. Like, you provided that security blanket well before Josh came along. And so it was very easy for her to have open ears to listen to the Spirit speaking and prompting and saying, hey, it's okay. Like, that's her confirmation. And then you listen to that, and then you involved her throughout the entire thing. I'm sure if she had said, hey, we need to stay at Amazon, you would have listened to that. That's something that I want people to understand. I'm learning that I'm not a perfect husband by any means whatsoever, but I do know that when I'm open with my wife and I listen to her opinions and I prove whatever it is through my actions or whatever, that this is the plan, this is going to work, things go a lot better.
Yeah, especially when you're like trying to buy a bow or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's when you get to the point where they actually start buying them for you. And they're like,
Yeah,
"Hey,
right.
here's your present." You're like, "Whoa, how did you know?" Like,
Yeah. Well, for real though, I think this whole thing, life, whatever, it's all a team sport. I think because we're experiencing it, behind our eyeballs, right? We're experiencing it with our own internal experience. One thing that we forget is life is truly a team sport. Business is a team sport. Your relationship's a team sport. Everything you do, how you interact with your community, uh, you know, if you want to get strong, you need to lift heavy. To lift heavy, you probably need somebody to back you up, right? You probably need somebody to spot you. Like it's a team, no matter what individual thing you're doing. Archery is maybe the most zen sport on the planet. And it's something like it's therapy, it's competitive. There's so many beautiful things about it that we all love. Those of us that are into it. But you need to have coaches. You need to have people that mentor you. You need to have people that teach you. You need to have, people to help you set up. There's a million different things that go on that proves that it's just as much a team sport as it is, as anything else. So I think if you look at life from that perspective and you look for who you're going to put on your team, it makes life a lot easier.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, I definitely agree with that. It's really important to. I mean, choosing your spouse first of all is a big deal. Some people take it pretty flippantly. It is something that's your teammate for forever, right?
Yeah.
That's something that people need to recognize as you've chosen that person. Now, communicate with that person, talk to them a little bit. So, it's something that's a big deal. So, but again, moving towards the idea of the faith behind it, you guys, how long has faith played a role in your life? Was it something that ebbed and flowed, has ebbed and flowed? Have you always been firm in your faith? Was it something that you adopted later in life? Like what kind of a quick synopsis of your journey through faith in life?
Yeah, I was raised, my mom did a great job of taking me to church and all of that stuff and I was raised by my mom for the early part of my life. And then my stepdad, who's actually LDS as well. And although he had left the LDS church, we also had a very strong, church life and, Christian faith all the way up through high school. Right. I get out of high school. I basically kind of stopped thinking about it, worrying about it. I just was not a priority. I did not have that relationship. I kind of let it go. Right. Again, thought I could figure it out all on my own, as a lot of us do at least. And it wasn't until I went through all of that, got in the military, did all this, that, or the other. And I never rekindled that relationship. Even in combat, you'd think I would, and I didn't. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. So I felt pretty hard away from it. And it wasn't until my wife and I really started kind of getting on the rocks, and I could see that ultimatum coming, and I could see that world, because none of that was a surprise, right? And I stopped having the tools to manage it. At some point, I realized I didn't have the tools. And I went back to the one thing that I knew in my life where I felt the most secure, and that was in faith. And I started going back to church. So I was in Cuba, and we had a chapel there, and I just basically non-denominational, just jumped in and just started engaging. Right. And again, like we talk about listening, and I guess one of those things that I could hear in the back of my head that I wasn't equipped to handle what could potentially be happening in my life with my relationship. And, I had 2 or 3 kids at that point. Like I didn't know how to handle it. And so I went to that, and I felt being drawn to it. And, a side note, I spent a lot of time in music in church and all of that. And, I've played guitar for 30 years now, and have done a lot of stuff in the music space. And, you know, that's my favorite way to worship and all of that. And so like I volunteered, I just kind of went all in, right? I needed help bad, to emotionally process and manage, what was happening. And that was the best thing that could have happened, was kind of re-engaging my faith in that experience. And then as soon as we kind of got through that season of our life, we kind of went all in as a family, because Crystal and I, before that, weren't going to church together. We weren't raising our kids in the church. And it wasn't until we made all of these changes and worked together to do that relationship even got stronger and stronger. We both started volunteering at a church we found in Spokane. And that honestly was the major move in our lives that really offered a foundation for us to probably keep going to where we're at today. We had an amazing community, like I talked about before. We volunteered. We were, you know, it was life-changing and life-saving, I really think. And that was, you know, I got to baptize my wife. I baptized my kids. I reaffirmed my faith. And it's all a very personal relationship. And I'm not big on platform. We've talked about it. I'm terrible at all of that stuff. And I think this is probably the only time I've really publicly talked about it. I don't even talk about it much at work here, but all grace and all glory go to that, because frankly, that's what turned it around. And that was the help that I needed. And that was the team, the team to get onto to really get my stuff together.
No, for sure. And it's something that, again, you listen to the promptings, you were open to that. And it sucks that sometimes we have to get to kind of a low spot before we realize how good we had it during certain aspects of our life. And especially with, with religion, it's something that is really a big deal. And I think it's cool that, you were saying that your stepdad was LDS at one point and then continued on with a different church. Either way, it's religion is more of a boat or a vehicle to get you into the journey towards something. And that something is, belief in Christ, God, eternal life with your family. And I think that a lot of people go through that situation where you're reliant on your family, your parents' testimony while you're a kid. You're going through high school, then you finally get off on your own, and you're kind of like, oh, it's nice to not go to church in the mornings, on Sunday. I get to sleep in on Sunday. What? Like, I don't have to wear a tie. What is this? And a lot of people feel that, and it's hard, for parents, I imagine, to see kids have to gain their own testimony of whatever their beliefs are. But eventually things generally come back around. And again, if it wasn't for that, who knows what would happen. But I definitely appreciate the fact that that's part of your journey, and that's a big part of your journey to why you're still married. You had the experience at Amazon. You're now at MKC. We rocket to the freaking moon right now with that company. And it's awesome to see. So I love that you shared that. And I'm doing my best this year to try and share that even more, with my episodes, because I definitely want to make sure that people understand, like, as a big part of my life and who I am. And a lot of people that I talk to as well, like yourself, have had that experience to where that is a big portion of why you're successful at where you're at. So definitely appreciate that. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that maybe you wanted to highlight? Because, I don't know. Is there anything that I haven't touched on yet?
I think when it comes to what we're doing with Montana Knife Company, I just want to make sure that everybody knows how much we appreciate it. And our customers are 100% our world. And for those that are customers of ours, we can't thank you enough. And we're truly dedicated, and we promise to keep that relationship and hold it as dear as we possibly can, because that's really what defines us. And then for those people that would ever consider being customers, we welcome obviously them with open arms, but we also, to everybody that really is looking to be a consumer in the United States, every experience that you have with your money is really where you put your money is who you are, in a lot of ways. And invest in relationships whether that's investing in a relationship with a company, and it doesn't have to be our company, but you're investing in a relationship when you put those dollars down. And especially when it comes to, moving our economy, whether that's American manufacturing, because that's what we do. We actually talk a lot about it. And as we continue to grow, the revenue that we make at Montana Knife Company, a lot of it's from outside the state of Montana, but then we get to reinvest that into jobs. We get to reinvest that into continuing to grow this and continue to deliver on behalf of our customers. And that goes back into our economy here in Montana. That goes back to our community. That goes back to the people that we truly cherish and a way of life that we cherish. A big part of Montana Knife Company is also how we give back to conservation. And that's where those dollars are going to too. So remember, when you're voting with your dollars in a lot of ways with how you consume. And so that's the only thing that I just want Americans especially to really look into, is they can be patriots with their dollar and how they invest that with the brands that they choose to invest with.
Yeah, without going too far down the rabbit hole, that is one place that you can guarantee that your voice will be heard. There's a lot of controversy out there about voting and all the other stuff that's going on, but if you take that dollar and you put it into a company that you believe in, that there is no in between. That is you directly to the company. And so definitely support companies that you believe in, that you can get behind. Obviously I chose to partner up with Montana Knife Company for that reason, because it's something that I truly believe in. The experiences that I've seen other people have, that I've heard other people have, when people will reach out to me and tell me about how amazing a knife is that they just got on a drop, or how excited they are about a certain drop happening, and whatever it is, it's something that is unreal. A knife company in the United States, a saturated market, you've found a way to overcome all of those issues, and it's outstanding. So kudos to you, kudos to the management, and also the people that are sharpening blades. Every piece of the company is important, and it's cool to see that. Just another highlight real quick of Tristan, who just won a sheep hunt.
Isn't that wild?
He's one of the original employees sharpening knives, right?
Yep.
If I understand that correctly.
Yep,
so
that's correct.
He's put in the work, and he's there grinding away, making sure you guys have the sharpest knife possible. So they have to put those labels on the boxes that tell you don't cut yourself with them. Things like that. It's just an awesome company. It's a family. You can tell that, and you invest into each other. You invest into your community, and even have grown your community to be more than just Frenchtown and Montana, but nation and international wide. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, that's the idea. So it's good. It's good to hear that we're on our way.
Exactly. Cool. Well, guys, again, here's Andrew. Andrew is a stud. He has a lot of business experience. I'm going to make him be an Instagrammer. So no, but really, I'm going to leave Andrew's Instagram down below, along with, of course, Montana Knife Company, the link there, so you can go check out the blades that are in stock. If other drops, I had a guy reach out to me recently that was like, hey, I actually was able to pick up one of those Triumphs early because I was on one of the early drops. So get in on those, the texting, they're not going to just saturate you with a bunch of advertising. No. They want you to be able to get the best knife as soon as possible. So that being said, leaving all the links down below. Andrew, thank you so much for tuning in here.
Thanks.
Coming on and spending some very valuable time of yours here on the podcast, sharing your story. Really appreciate you, man, and everything you guys are doing over there at MKC. So with that being said, guys, check out the links down below. Thanks so much for tuning in. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.
Great conversation with Andrew. Hope you enjoyed that one. Gained some knowledge as far as business is concerned, as far as Montana Knife Company is concerned, and how he went from the military to having a family in the military to transitioning to business, and how he made those different transitions. There's a lot of good golden nuggets in there for us all to learn from. So hope you enjoyed this one. Share it out there, guys. I've got this thing going on. I don't know what's going on with Instagram, but they will not share my content to people that are not following me. So if you could share this on your story, tag me in it over there on Instagram. If you're here on YouTube, just share it with other people, guys. I'm putting this content out there for you for free and providing discount codes to some amazing partners and companies that I work with down below. So if you're in the market for outdoors gear and equipment, definitely check those links out down below as well. And with that being said, hope you have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.